Good evening and welcome to the 13th edition of the Old Git Gooners podcast. Hopefully not an unlucky one. Let's see if the tech holds up. But we've had a good start because all three of my guests have arrived and all three of them are, um, well, two of them are relative veterans of the old online Gooner podcast back in the day. And Peter Beau has joined us in this new sort of version of that, rekindled after a 5-year absence. And all of them have contributed wonderfully over the years when I was doing my stint as Gooner editor, and some of them even before I was Gooner editor. So they've been around long enough. I will introduce them one by one. Firstly, Mr. Marc Ollington, who used to write in an irreverent style, which went down quite well with some people and not at all well with others. But, it's it's all part of the game. And frankly, it's more interesting if, you are a bit black and white like that. Next up, someone who is far more measured and responsible, as one would hope for a bit of balance, and that is Mr. Peter Beau, making his second appearance on this particular Old Git Gooners podcast. And last but by no means least, Mr. Phil Wall, who was the author of the anger management column for many a season, and then started writing about programme, wasn't it? I think you were doing a series on the Arsenal programme.
I did do a history of the programme for a while, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Steve Ashford actually complimented me on it at one point, which was, most unusual in itself, I think.
Right. Well, that is probably the ultimate compliment in so many ways. But yes, also a current board member of the Arsenal Supporters Trust. So, gentlemen, we have had 3 matches since I last recorded a podcast. So what we tend to do is reflect on those and more general themes arising. But we're going to start with the most recent one, which was Wednesday evening's 1-0 win at Brighton. And my question is, are we going to be playing like this for the rest of the season? What's your gut feeling after watching that performance, which in a way I don't think anyone really enjoyed, but obviously turned out okay in the end. But there is an argument that if you continue to do that, you might not get the results you require, given the, relative paucity of our attacking stats, for one thing. So let me go to Peter first, and let's have the view of our learned elder panelist.
I was called venerable in the last Gooner, which I think is a euphemism for old. But no, I mean, you say paucity of our attacking stats. I mean, I'm going to I'll go back to that in a second. But we have got the second highest number of goals scored in the Premier League, so we're not scraping around. A lot of those have come from set pieces. When I last looked, set piece goals counted the same as other goals. I think that, I mean, my experience, I'm just doing a piece for the Goonerholic blog at the moment, looking at the 6 titles I remember in my supporting lifetime. And my memory of most of those is that when you get to the sharp end of the season, there's incredible pressure and you get some very, very difficult results. I was reflecting on the last game Arsenal played at Highbury in the 70-71 double season. They played Stoke, and that was the most excruciating game you've ever seen. We won it 1-0, and John Radford cleared the ball off the line with the last kick of the match. I mean, these things are very tense, and I think it's the tension and the fact that most players in the Premier League now are absolutely knackered because they've been playing so much that have contributed to this. And of course, almost everybody in the Premier League has got something some sort of target inside, either to get into Europe or to not go down, or not to get into the relegation fight, or to obviously to fight for the title. So I think that we will, yeah, we are going to see excruciating games, but I don't think there's anything unusual.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm going to go to you, Mr. Ollington, and I'm going to say, do we look like a team that's actually going to win the title in recent matches?
I would say, I mean, my nerves are still absolutely shot from the midweek game. It was maybe one of the most stressful matches I think I have ever seen. And I could say the same from the very, very start of the season. And actually, I went back and to kind of do a bit of research for today and thought about all the games I've been to. Apart from the two Spurs games and one half against Villa, I think every single match has been stressful this season. And so, even though we're on the supposed run-in, I think we're top of the league without playing particularly well in the Premier League. But we're here and we're top and we are 7 points clear. I know City have a game in hand. So, just judging it on the rest of the season, I can't see things getting any better from here on in. And I think it's going to be the most eight terrible games we've probably ever witnessed in our lives. But I still think we're going to win the league. And come that, I'm not going to care one bit. I don't know if I'll survive and get to that point. There was literally 1 point on, I think, half through the second half on that game on Wednesday. I just thought, I can't watch any more of this. But we've got to strap ourselves in. Let's, see if we can last till May. But I don't think it's going to get better. But, come May, if we're champions, who cares?
Yeah, I am aware of some supporters who will actually not watch. They will go for a walk, take the dog out, whatever, simply because they just cannot enjoy it, and it's not good for their hearts. Phil, are you Mr. Optimism, Mr. Realism? What's your own take on how you're seeing Arsenal play in recent weeks?
Well, I agree with points of both of my fellow panelists there, but I think overall we're going to see a little bit of a mixture. It's certainly not going to be all flowing football and cheering from the stands non-stop, because it's as Peter said, it's going to be very tense. It's already tense. It's going to be more tense. I mean, there have been a few sort of relaxing games this season. We beat Leeds 5-0 at the start of the season, which was very enjoyable, I seem to recall. Marc has obviously banished that one from his mind, but that did happen, I believe, this season. And of course, the Spurs games, both of those ended up very relaxing and enjoyable. But most of the others recently, it's starting to be a bit of a grind. And I think that will be the general flow of it for the next 8 league matches. I don't know whether it's fair to say that Arsenal are playing badly or the whole Premier League is poor this season, because if you look at the performance of the Premier League teams in the Champions League, then you could argue that we're clearly a much higher standard than pretty much anybody else. So, and certainly any other league. So it's difficult to say what the issue is. Obviously, we have all kinds of commentators, and I mean that in the broad sense, saying that Arsenal are ruining football, and set piece goals are a problem because it's not entertaining. Well, I think these things go in phases. It's nothing lasts forever. Whatever you do in football, it doesn't last forever. There's always a new style or a new tactic or new something else that comes along. This is just seems like a bit of a stick to beat Arsenal with for people who don't want Arsenal to win anything. And in football, there are a lot of people with very long memories who don't like Arsenal for various historical reasons. Going back to the initial great success of the 1930s, that lasted until the 1970s at least, that people didn't like Arsenal because they'd been so successful in the 30s and become the so-called Bank of England club and won so much and lauded it over everybody and had a much better stadium than anybody else did. While everyone else's stadiums were falling apart in the 70s, Arsenal had a magnificent stadium. Other teams didn't like that. It was only smaller teams who came to Arsenal on as a one-off occasion and played them in a cup or something. That was as good as going to Wembley for them. So Arsenal have always had this. That lasted kind of 40 years. Then we had all the Arsene Wenger success as well, and I'm not saying we got bored with the success. We got bored with Arsene eventually. I know you did, Kevin. So did I. But it's another reason why people think Arsenal have had enough success. We don't want them having any more. There's all kinds of reasons why people are against Arsenal, and I think some of the criticism of how Arsenal are playing is just all part of having a stick to beat Arsenal with, and doesn't really mean anything. But I suppose to answer the question, summarise my answer to the question very simply, I think some games will be better than others, but most of them will be a bit of a grind.
Okay, and you think we'll get over the line? You think we will finish in top place?
Oh, I'm starting to think that. Yeah, I mean, I haven't dared think it until March started, really, because of the fact we've been caught before. But I'm starting to think we're in a position where it really is ours to throw away, and I think the team has the mental strength now, or the squad has the mental strength to take it over the line. Which maybe they haven't had before. Maybe the squad wasn't big enough, and maybe people were more tired. And you could argue that some players look pretty tired now, but I think the squad as a whole is big and strong enough to get us over the line this time. So I'm cautiously optimistic on that front at the moment.
Kevin, excuse me, Phil. Kevin, could I just say, I don't know if you've seen the last 3 Manchester City games. I saw I saw the highlights of the game on Wednesday, but I saw the other 2 games where they played Leeds and they played. I'm trying to remember who it was now. It was Newcastle, and they were extremely unimpressive in both games. I mean, it was just as tight and difficult for them. There wasn't the flowing Manchester City that everybody eulogises about. And certainly against Forest, they we would have been, I think, crucified for playing like they played in the second half against Forest. Forest, to their credit, scored 2 very good goals, but they're finding it a problem as well. And I think if you're trying to work out if we've got a chance of winning the title, I think one of the most encouraging things is that City dropped 2 points from a winning position twice on Wednesday. And the one we've done stuff like it was awful what happened at Wolves, but look how Wolves are playing at the moment. So these things are all comparative, aren't they?
What's the thing now? There's no easy games in the Premier League, right? And I think that sums it all up. Look at that mid-table, so bunched up. There's very little difference in the top teams and bottom teams now. And to your point, Peter, City can drop points at any time, and they do. And that's the bit that gives me optimism.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they have got a quite a interesting run of games because of their Champions League involvement. So 2 games against Real Madrid for starters, and we know they've got to go to Chelsea, who can beat anyone on their day, and almost beat us at the Emirates recently. But of course, that brings us on to. I mean, the one thing I will say about the Brighton game, yes, we took an early lead, okay, and that kind of mitigates what followed. However, you can also say that was a game where there was space to play, and we were not playing a low block, let's face it. Brighton were going for it. They were there to be exploited. Now, I'm not going to single out any individuals, but as an attack, our forward players seem to struggle in terms of what we know they can do. Shall we put it that way? I think the one perhaps individually you could say did better than others was Saka, simply because, he did at least get some efforts on goal. He actually was responsible for pretty much everything we did in the first hour in terms of giving the Brighton keeper anything to think about. But is that, I mean, I can't believe it's not something to do with not understanding each other's play. It just seems to me that there is such fatigue mentally and physically that the players aren't able to play at their level, which is going to make the World Cup very interesting with any countries that have Premier League players, in my view, because not only will it be at the end of an exhausting season, but of course the conditions in a lot of the games will be quite oppressive in North America. So my question is it now something that is going to be the default for the rest of the season in terms of that lack of spark because of everything they've got to do? I mean, these guys are being run into the ground. Do you feel that was the reason for what happened on Wednesday night once we went one up?
I think it's mental fatigue more than physical, personally, because I don't think too many players are being overplayed. So I at this stage of the season, I don't think they're doing much training. They're just going from match to match. So they shouldn't be too exhausted. And let's face it, they are very fit, top level athletes. So they shouldn't be exhausted by doing their day job. But I think mentally it's difficult. And I don't know what's happened with some of the forwards this season. I mean, Gyökeres has been overall a disappointment. He's been good in some games, not in others. We've lost Havertz for a very large part of the season, and he seems to be the one who's able to kind of glue the attack together a bit better than others. Eze has been hot and cold. I mean, I've seen people criticising Saka for a whole string of poor performances. Odegaard does a lot of feeding the ball through to the attackers. He hasn't been there lately. So I think there's quite a combination of different factors that are causing the forwards to maybe misfire a bit. But what gives me hope is that the whole team is still very strong. There's still a very strong midfield and defence, and we're not going to concede many goals. We've conceded some stupid ones, but we're not going to concede very many. So I think the forwards misfiring is unfortunate, but I think there's just enough there to do the job, basically, in 9 out of 10 games. Man City away is the obvious one coming up that could be a problem for various reasons. But I think in most games, you look at Arsenal's opponents, who are mostly much lower down the table, you would think our forwards are better than their defence. It shouldn't be too much of an issue, even if we're not firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I do agree with you, Phil, but what worries me is you've gone through all of the team there, and I think we didn't mention Martinelli, who, is in and out. He's good 1 minute, good at the second half. Trossard had that great period at the first half of the season, but now that seems to have gone. We haven't really had one player all season that's hit a real rich vein of form. If I think about previous Arsenal title-winning teams, Perez, how he could pretty much be relied on all season to be pretty much really good game in and game out. Lundberg in that season where the last 15, 20 games, he was scoring almost every single match. I think all we need is just one of our players to catch fire and to have a really good last 10 games, whoever that might possibly be. Madueke could be him. Eze might come to form, but just one of them, it would be great if they hit a rich vein of form, because if they do, that could get us over the line.
Max Stelman, even, who knows? Yeah, if they unleash him. No, I think it's when you're saying that, Mark, you're talking about forwards there, aren't you? You're not having a great season, because obviously we've got some defenders that are having incredible seasons. Yeah,
stunning seasons. Yeah, and Zubimendi and Rice in the midfield as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I agree with what Phil was saying about the mental issue, and you were saying about the mental issues, because I think that if you see Zubimendi, he gave away that pass to Mbuemo in the Man United game, which still pains us, and he nearly gave a goal away last week against Chelsea. But I think the guy has been absolutely superb all season. And what you got to say is every single mistake, he's in a very vulnerable position there, and he gets seized on. And okay, he's given one goal away, but I think that it seems to me, just look at him, and obviously you then sort of superimpose your own thoughts onto these guys. But he looks to me as if he's never been in quite such a pressure cooker environment before. When you play for Real Sociedad, you probably don't have the same sort of pressured situations because they don't challenge for the title. And when he plays for Spain, there's lots of other very, very good players around him. They usually win most of their matches. So guys like him, I think, are suffering a little bit mentally, certainly. And I think even Declan Rice, you can see the pressure on Declan, but the guy has been extraordinary this season, and he has popped up with some very important goals as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, I agree. But to your point, Peter, he looks dead on his feet the last few games. Still good
Mm,
performances, but those little errors are kind of creeping in here and there. But he's played a lot of football, and
mm.
over 30 games, and what we got another 20 potentially left. So
Is it
Yeah, I
20?
mean, sorry, I was going to say I was looking at
15.
the double the team in if you're around in 1980 when we lost those two cup finals, we played 70 games that season. Everybody said, "How can a team play 70 games?" When you look at if we go all the way in the Champions League and the Carabao Cup, we're going all the way, obviously, but the FA Cup as well. That's going to be 60 plus games for people like Rice. On top of that, they've played about 8 internationals already. Then they're going to the World Cup. So those guys are going to be supremely knackered by the time they get there, if they're not, injured, if they don't have sort of a hamstring or muscular injuries, because there's going to be a whole, sort of spate of those, I'm sure, as the season gets to its climax.
Yeah, I think if we get to the final of all competitions, and it's a big if, don't get me wrong, a
Mm,
big if. But what's that, another 18 games?
Well, hang
So
on.
mm,
it's
Seven in Champions League would be four
one
in
in
the
the Carling Cup, whatever it's called now, Carabao, three in the FA Cup, and
four,
8 in the Premier League.
12. Yeah, you're right. 20 matches. Goodness me.
mm.
On one level, let's hope we do. But I mean that then raises the issue of Arteta's perceived reluctance to rotate a little more. Now, okay, Mansfield tomorrow, I think we can safely say that it will be the guys who are not normally starters that get a run out there. But what I'm thinking of is, let's say the Premier League race remains relatively tight and Arsenal continue to progress in Europe. A lot of the times they will be playing 2 games a week. Granted, on paper, it looks like some of the Premier League matchups might be against teams which are certainly not challenging for European places. Let's put it that way. Do you think the likes of Norgard, for example, and Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ben White and that kind of player will be seen more at the weekend? Or is Arteta just going to keep flogging the dead horse of his favoured 11?
Lewis Skelly is suspended for the cup tie tomorrow. So that I didn't realise that. Yeah.
Okay.
So but that's that one anyway. But yeah.
He hasn't played. How could he be
He's
suspended?
got 2 bookings in the FA Cup, Kev. So
Oh,
2 yellows mean you get a suspension.
I didn't realise. I thought they crossed over the competitions. Never mind.
You remember he had quite a difficult start in the Portsmouth game, and he got booked quite early on, I think, and he got booked again in the next game, but the Wigan game, I think. So yeah, no, in terms of Norgard, I mean, Norgard is a bit of a mystery this season because, a couple of mates of mine are Bradford fans, and they kept saying to me, "You've got an absolute steal there. This bloke's terrific. He's gonna put a lot of pressure on Rice. And I said, no, he won't put pressure on Rice. Rice is one of the best midfield players in Europe. But it's very good to know that you've got a good, reliable guy there, and we haven't, rotated him in anywhere near as much as I thought we might. But the weird thing is, and I agree about the quality of our squad, but even so, we're still a couple of players really short, with Marino being out for what maybe the rest of the season. We feel a bit like a midfield player short because it means that we have to keep playing Zubimendi and Rice most of the time. And if you've got them there, there's always the temptation to play them, isn't there? I think Norgard could certainly be brought in. The other one, I said it flippantly, but I'd be very interested to start Max Dowman at Mansfield because I just think the boy's got this incredible 16, and certainly the way he plays, he might just be the guy who lifts the team because he just doesn't care about the pressure. He just plays as if he's always played. And it might be interesting to see what he did, and play Madueke perhaps on the other wing, and then you've got maybe Martinelli and Trossard in on the bench if you need them.
Okay. Just a query. Has Max Dowman got some match fitness with the under-21s since his return from injury?
Couple of games I think he's played, Kev.
Right.
Okay. He
Okay.
played half the game last week, and he was taken off at half time. Yeah.
So he could play 60 minutes, for example, shouldn't he?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, and he's training with the first team. So yeah.
Well, on that level,
the only thing I'd be worried about.
Yes, Phil.
Sorry, Kev. The only thing I'd be worried about putting Dowman in from the start is that against a lower league team, they may just try and clog him, and then he's out for the season.
Yeah. It's always the risk. I mean, I think they're trying to clog him, whatever, but it's part of his education, isn't it? That's always going to happen to a player like him. But I think it's a fair point.
Okay. I mean, just on that sort of injury front, Arteta's been very cautious with the use of Kai Havertz since his return. I think he started possibly the FA Cup game against Wigan. I might be wrong. He might have been injured for that. I think he might have started Paul. I can't remember. I think he started one game in one of the cups anyway. But he hasn't started any others from memory. And obviously he came back, was out again for another 2 or 3 weeks, and then is back again. Is he being wrapped in cotton wool because of the fear that actually he might get injured again? What's your sort of gut feeling on, shall we say, the non-use of Havertz, certainly starting matches, when it's quite patently obvious he improves the team?
Yeah, I think it's a bit odd. I think in general, Arteta has a bit of a problem with rotation and doesn't rotate players in the way that we on the outside would expect him to. And with Havertz, it's been a very slow process getting him back in the team. And you think if there's nothing wrong with him, then play him a bit more than you have been. Not necessarily 90 minutes every week or every 3 or 4 days, but play him more than he has been played. So it just looks odd, and it may, he's got a bit of a history of injuries. Is it just to protect him, or is it that there's still some hangover of the injury there? I don't know, but I'd love to find out. Maybe one day we will. Maybe at the end of the season, Arteta will come clean and tell us, but he probably won't. But it's just it would just be nice to see Havertz in a bit more action. But I do worry. I mean, when he came on, I can't remember which game it was now, a week or two ago. Just as a general comment, the problem with this format of of getting us old gits on here, Kevin, is that I remember things from the 1970s better than I can remember things from 2 weeks ago. So, I don't know what game I'm talking about when Havertz came on, but he was, I was immediately worried he was going to get injured again and go back off. It may have been the game that he started, actually. And I thought, he's not going to last 90 minutes, that's for sure. And then he did go off. I was joking with somebody, he's gone straight to the hospital. We won't be seeing him again for a couple of weeks. Luckily, that wasn't the case, but he did seem to have some slight niggle whenever it was. So I don't know. It's all a bit of a mystery, and I'm not sure. Because of the fact that Arteta doesn't rotate how I would expect him to rotate, or how most people would seem to expect him to rotate, I don't know whether it's just that or whether there's something else with Havertz that's still a problem. Either way, it's a little bit worrying.
Yeah, there was rumours, wasn't there, on social media, which I try to avoid these days like the plague, but sometimes, you get sucked back in, that there is some underlying injury there and he can't play every single game and his minutes have to be managed. But I have no idea if that's conjecture or how accurate it actually is. But there's no doubt, your original question, Kev, he brings something else extra to the team. He's a class player. And whenever he's on the pitch, I just think he kind of meshes everything together in a way that other players just can't do. So I personally would love to see far more of him, but who knows if there's something a bit deeper going on.
Yeah, I mean, he has had two very significant different injuries in the last year. Before that, I mean, Arteta was boasting about how robust he was, and of course, I think they went to Dubai, didn't they? And he sort of broke down, and that was a big injury. And obviously, he was out to the end of the season, and then he came back, and I think he got injured on the day we decided to sign Eze. I think it was obviously we did that because of his injury, and I think the interesting thing there is you spend 60 odd million on someone, probably because you think this guy is going to be out for a long time, don't you? And of course he has been out for a long time. But when he came back on, I mean, he got the winner against Chelsea. I think I might have got that goal, but even now, but he does look a much more complete footballer than Joker is. And I thought on again in the Brighton game, when they brought him on at the end, he was much more cohesive player than Jokeres, and he held the ball up much better and brought people into play a lot more. And it would be nice to see more of him, because I think he's certainly, if we were playing in the Champions League final, I think I'd probably pick him to play up front rather than Jokeres to start anyway. I don't know, that might be controversial, but I think I would do that.
I don't think it is, Peter. Frankly, I think there's a lot of goodwill towards Gyok, but I think the penny has dropped that sadly, the most complimentary we can be about him is to say he's inconsistent, which kind of is a dilemma, because one of the things we are doing more this season as a switch in our tactics is playing the ball long more often. And I had the impression that part of the reason that, for example, Gabriel Jesus rarely starts at centre forward is because Gyok is a target for the long ball. The unfortunate thing about it is that he rarely actually manages to do anything once the ball does go forward in the air. I mean, that's just the reality. It's unfortunate. And it's quite obvious we will be buying at least one striker in the summer, and assuming Gabriel Jesus departs, because why would he stay if he's not getting any game time under the current circumstances? Then we will surely get two. But I mean, do you think there is actually a role for Gabriel Jesus in what remains of the season? 20 matches. We're talking about rotation. He can play anywhere across the front line. What's the story there? I mean, Arteta used to love the guy. He is fit now. He's not like he has been a complete disaster when he's come on. He has actually made a few passes and got involved. We just haven't seen very much of him. I mean, what is the story there, do you think?
I think he's flattered to deceive a bit. He's just not. I mean, I hesitate to say he's not a good enough player. He probably is a good enough player. I mean, he played at Man City for several years. He's certainly a good player. I just don't. I don't. He doesn't knit anything together. He doesn't tie the attack together. He doesn't generally win many challenges, as far as I can see. Maybe maybe stats will prove me wrong, but I just don't think he's got enough. I think he's just a bit lightweight all round, and he's not a brilliant goal scorer. He's never scored a hatful of goals at any point. I don't think he does score goals, just not enough of them to be your out and out striker, which was what I thought we'd bought him for. And I've always had my doubts, but he just seems a bit lightweight. Has he got a role for the rest of the season? He probably has, because with so many games, then it's always useful to bring fresh legs on and stretch the defence. And maybe, as he's done a couple of times recently, something will happen as a result. We'll get a goal, he'll get a goal, or he'll get somebody else a goal. And that'll be enough. Certainly long term, I don't see him being there next season. I certainly don't see him being in a starring role next season. I think he can be a help this season, but I wouldn't be relying on him, and he certainly wouldn't be in my first 11 or anywhere near it.
I agree with you, Phil. I think you look at his stats, which I looked at before we came in today. 95 goals in 236 games at City, and he actually had a season where he got 21 goals and 23 goals. So he's coming to Arsenal 11, 8, 7, and 5 this season. 31 goals in 114 games. I know a lot have been a sub, but his stats aren't anywhere near to the level they were at Manchester City. And what surprised me was I thought he was 32, 33. He's 28. And so he should be in the prime of his career. And this is really when a striker comes into his own, starts banging in the goals. He should be at the pinnacle of what he is now. And don't get me wrong, some cameos have looked decent. He's obviously skillful. He's a good player. He is not going to get you 20 goals a season, which is why we signed Gyökeres in the first place, because he wasn't that type of player. And I think he'll go at the end of this season. But as you mentioned, there could be 20 games left to go. So every squad member has to play their part. And Arteta will have to use him to some level. But he's not going to start many games, surely.
No, I mean, I agree with what you both said about him in terms of, he's not, I think, in domestic football, a starter anywhere near it. He does get some lovely goals. The goal he got against Wigan. Okay, we were 3-0 up, but he took it beautifully, and he suddenly was what a good player he is. Where you do tend to see the best of him is in Champions League. If you looked at his Champions League stats, they're much better than his domestic, and I suspect that maybe because the level isn't as high, but I think it's also partly because it's nowhere near as physical. And I think it's a physicality. And of course, the other thing that with Gabriel Jesus is he's had at least one serious injury. I mean, he had an ACL last season, but he's had a serious injury every single season that he's played for us, and that's disrupted him. But no, he's your classic sort of last 20 minutes alternative striker. And as Kevin said earlier, he can play anywhere across the front three, can't he? Useful player, but not, I think he'll be off in the close season.
Okay, I've been putting myself on mute because the building I'm in, some moron has triggered the fire alarm. So either that building's on fire, if that is, you'll know about it soon.
Yeah.
However, I will ask the question, then go back on mute. Simple one. You are Mikel Arteta. You've got the big games coming up. You've got the ones that you need your very best team for. Who are you going to play at left back?
So I would certainly at the moment play Hincapié. I think Hincapié has been one of the real success stories of this season. I think he's got better. I thought he had a very, very good game indeed against Brighton, and I thought he played. I think he's played extremely well in most of the recent games. And he gives you that versatility that if he covers across into the centre as well. Calafiore is a very, very good player, but he's extremely fragile, and because he doesn't play a run of games, I don't think he's quite as consistent. I don't think it helps the defence when you're switching players in and out all the time. And although I love Lewis Skelly last season, there's no doubt he's not had anything like as good a season this season. So I'd go Hincapié, Calafiore, and Lewis Skelly.
Yeah, I think I'd have to
Peter.
agree.
Go on, sorry, Phil.
Hincapié is. I think I'd have to agree. Hincapié is probably of those three the one I would pick because he's more solid. I mean, I really like Calafiore and I really like watching him play because he's kind of a wild card and does unexpected things. Maybe he'll pop up and have a shot from 30 yards and score at some point. But in terms of solid defence that you can rely on and relying on somebody not to get booked in the first 20 minutes, then I think I'd go with Hincapié rather than Calafiore from that point of view. And like Peter was saying, Miles Lewis Skelly has not performed at the same level this season as last season, and hopefully that's a temporary thing, and he'll be back bigger and better and stronger.
Yeah, same as exactly the same comments. And I think Hincapié has got stronger and stronger as the season has gone on. And with more games that he plays, the more solid he actually is. And I think, the type of what we mentioned at the start about how tough the following games are going to be and how they're going to be a slog. He's the kind of player you want at the back when you have a game that's going to be a slog. Calafiore is maybe a bit more suited to Champions League games where maybe we've got a bit more space and the pressure's off a little bit less. But yeah, for me, it's Hincapié every step of the way.
I also love the way he dismissed Hertzler on the touchline on Wednesday night. I thought, with the disdain, the sort of smile he gave him, and which is exactly the way to deal with Hertzler, I think. So yeah, he got some bonus points for me there.
Good point, Peter.
Let's talk about what Hertzler was complaining about. They are apparently going to change the rules about restarts from at least throw-ins. I'm not sure if corners are included, but to me, it seems like it's partially an energy-saving move that Arteta instructs his players to do, because if they take another 10 seconds over a throw and they have, let's say, 40 in a match, that's going to save a lot of time in the legs. So my question is, does it actually annoy you? I mean, occasionally I will admit, even I get annoyed by the amount of time they're taking. And secondly, do you actually think Arsenal are any different from any other team in terms of the amount of time they do take with throw-ins?
I think overall, there's probably not much difference between Arsenal and anybody else. Some teams are better than others, and then that's going to vary season by season. Like so many things in football, there's peaks and troughs, and different players do different things. And sometimes the whole team does the same thing, and sometimes it doesn't. But so I don't think Arsenal are worse than anybody else. Is the short answer there. But in terms of individual players, I mean, Ben White does seem to take an absolute age to take any throw, and maybe I've just had experience of him taking throws in front of me when I've been sat there, waiting for him to get on with it. And even I'm shouting "get on with it" at him by the time he gets around to taking it. It does seem ridiculous sometimes. I don't know if it's I know you said this before, Kev, that it seems like it's a deliberate tactic by Arteta to save the legs a little bit. And I can see that, over a whole game, that's going to add up. But with the ability to use so many different subs these days, it seems a little bit unnecessary, because it gives the other team a break as well, and maybe the other team are more tired than we are. So why not just get on with the game, because the crowd would enjoy it a bit more, I think.
Can I just? I'd say it slightly differently. I think they deliberately prolong the agony because Arsenal got such a brilliant and formidable record from set pieces. I think they sort of pile on the, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, and it gives them a little bit more time to do something at the last minute. I mean, they've done this for a long time. The other thing you have to say is that time that we are wasting, if you like, we might need some of that at the end of a game that we were chasing. But the other thing I would say about, if you can just mention what time wasting in a slightly different context, the Athletic did a study yesterday, I don't know if you saw it, and they showed the amount of time that goalkeepers on average take when they get the ball. And interestingly, Raya is the third shortest amount of time in the league in terms of getting. But surprisingly, at second longest is Verbruggen of Brighton, who takes twice as long as Raya. So he can put that in his pipe and smoke it, Mr. Hertzler, I'm afraid.
Last time, Kev, I was on this podcast, I actually had a rant about the amount of time it took us to take our throw-ins. And 'cause it was bothering me at the time. And to the point that Phil raised actually is that even though it might benefit us, it benefits the other team, and it's just quite boring to watch. Then I got
Mm,
my brother after the podcast who works in football stats and sends me all these graphs and charts about whilst I'm wrong and how actually we're the sixth, obviously, team that does it the least. I don't quite know what the stats were, but he basically said you're talking absolute rubbish. But you can only go by the test of the eye. And all season, I think I have been quite infuriated, not so much by corners, because I get Peter's point about, when we have a corner, the other team must be so nervous. But it's the throw-ins that get me. But
mm,
I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. And I think it's probably there to the end of the season and the rules change. It's not pretty, it's frustrating. Arteta, though, seems to think it works. And so, yeah, it's probably here to stay, right?
mm.
Yeah, Peter.
Is there actually a rule change coming in? What is that rule change?
Well, there's something about the referee at his discretion can decide to start a 5-second countdown if he thinks the player is taking too long to take a throw. That's my understanding as it is, but I mean,
I
it's
think
yet
you're right, yeah.
official.
Well, if you remember back a couple of seasons ago, we had a peculiar incident at Crystal Palace where I think it was Havertz picked the ball up and took an eternity to throw it, and then gave it to Tomiyasu, and Tomiyasu picked the ball up and just went through it, and the referee sent him off for time wasting because he'd already had another yellow. And I've never, again, a bit like the Martinelli sending off at Wolves a few years ago when he got
Double
two
booking,
book,
yeah.
two bookings in about 10 seconds. You think, has any other team ever had a bloke sent off for that? It was an absolutely ridiculous thing because Tomiyasu had the ball for about 3 seconds. But I suppose it was the total amount of time that we were taking. I think we were down to 10 men, I think, and we were actually time wasting, which was fairly sensible then. But no, it is frustrating, and I don't know where you sit, Phil, but Ben White is the arch exponent of the extremely long time to take a throw. He can take 30 seconds between picking the ball up and finally dispatching it, can't he?
Easily. Yeah, and he'll walk up the line a bit, then he'll walk back a bit, then he'll look forward, he'll look back, he'll end up where he
Mm,
was, then he'll go forward again, and finally, when the ref starts getting a bit agitated, then he'll throw it. It does seem over the top with him.
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give you a straight choice here. You've got the game as it is now, or a rule change which says it is basketball style timing. The ball goes out, the clock stops, you get 30 minutes each half. What is your preference?
Ooh, good question, Kevin. I still keep it as it is now. I've been watching football like it is now since I first started watching football many, many, many years ago. And despite all that's wrong with it, VAR, too many rule changes coming in, keep the 45 minutes. Though I can see the reason
Yeah,
for I can see the reason for the question.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when this has been raised before, somebody came up with a good reason why you shouldn't switch to a specified 30 minutes per half or whatever. I can't think off the top of my head what that reason is, but I tend to be a traditionalist anyway, and would probably rather stick with what we've got and try and enforce the rules a bit better, which seems like a good idea. I mean, the other thing is, maybe this is the reason actually, that if you stop the clock every time, then there's no incentive to get the game going at all, is there? Because no time is being wasted. So what if Ben White suddenly takes 10 minutes to take a throw? Who's going to stop him doing that?
Well, my fire alarm has stopped in the background, fortunately, so I can rejoin the conversation properly. But there would be some kind of rule of restarting within lifetime. I'm sure about that.
I've got a friend who's a rugby referee, and he's always saying to me, "Why don't you use the clock like you do in rugby, where they stop the clock as soon as there's a stoppage in play?" And Emmy Martinez is being treated, for the fourth time and all that sort of thing, and you there is a value there, but at the same time, if they say there are 8 minutes of injury time, there are 8 minutes of injury time. It's sometimes mystifying as to why that then becomes 11 if nothing else really happens. But it does seem to happen, particularly when you're defending a lead, But, if you do have that clock in rugby, at least you sort of, it does focus attention on how much time the ball's in play, doesn't it?
Well, the other thing about rugby is that you have that marvelous thing at the end, once the actual horn goes for the full time, whereby they have to play on until the ball is dead. Can you imagine the drama if there's a 1-goal lead and the team who are obviously trying to get the equaliser are desperately trying to keep the ball in at the same time as trying to score a goal? I just think it would be hugely entertaining. And
I would certainly support that as a rule change. That when the time is up, the ref or some kind of hooter goes off because the ref has given the right signal. So everybody knows that when the ball next goes out of play, it's over. And until then, you carry on. I think that would be fantastic. Yeah.
The tension would be unbelievable. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, Phil.
I will get on to Wilson and tell him to put that in the next FIFA set of recommendations. They're going to change offside, or they might change offside, so it's clear daylight. Can you imagine? It's quite a revolution, but certainly a welcome one because we want to see attacking play. But yes, anyway, that's enough about officialdom. Let us talk about a team that Arsenal did face in the last 2 weeks, who are having an interesting time in their state-of-the-art new stadium, host to many a pop concert each summer. They're raking it in money-wise, but something's gone wrong on the football side. So, I mean, do you seriously think Spurs could go down?
I certainly hope they could.
Well, we all hope they could, Phil. That's not an answer. Will they? Can they?
I think they will probably escape because they've had bad patches before, and it's always hilarious at some point in the season to say, "Oh, look, Tottenham are nearer the relegation zone than they are the top four, or nearer the bottom than the top," and that's happened a few times. But they'll always climb back out of it, and I think they probably will climb back out of it. But having said that, having changed the manager, and the new manager seems as clueless as the previous one and the board, I'm starting to be as cautiously optimistic on that as I am about Arsenal actually winning the league. That cautiously optimistic that Spurs will actually go down because it's looking feasible. I'd say there's maybe only between a 10 and 20% chance at the moment. I know they're only 1 point off the relegation zone, but I think it's still quite a low chance. I think we've got more chance of winning the league than they have of going down, but I would love to see both happen.
I think it's a 33.3% chance because those three teams at the bottom, as you mentioned, Phil, there's only like 1 point difference. There's not much between them actually, and the Spurs injuries are long term. I watched the game against Palace last night. I very rarely watch other teams' matches, but there's nothing else on. And honestly, Spurs are rubbish, like properly rubbish. And I thought it was
Yeah.
just against us. But you've never seen a team look more bereft of confidence, couldn't string more than a couple of passes together. The fans have given up. The atmosphere is toxic. I mean,
Mm.
it's not a guarantee they will, but there's a very strong possibility, and it's bloody brilliant to watch. I mean, considering the stress I had watching the Brighton game, it was a joy to watch that match against Palace last night. I never laughed so much in my life. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a slightly different thing. I'm probably going to admit something awful, in that I have a grandson who is he's disinherited, obviously, but he is a Tottenham fan, and he's a Tottenham fan because his dad's a Tottenham fan. So I let my daughter marry a Tottenham fan, which is horrendous. She actually, I'm pleased to say, claimed the second child for. She actually said to him, "You are going to be an Arsenal fan because Grandad will be very upset if you're not," which is true. And she says, been an Arsenal fan. And, I mean, this is true going to Woolwich. My family supported
Yeah.
Arsenal. And the thing is, he's not as interested in football as his Tottenham supporting brother. The Tottenham supporting brother was there last night and he reported about it. I mean, he said the atmosphere, and it's exactly what Marc said. He said it's absolutely toxic. I mean, the producer was just panning round everybody, and they were virtually slitting their wrists, weren't they, on live on
Yeah.
TV? It was horrendous,
It's a joyful
and
bit of television.
yeah, but they are, and everything. Their best player then gets sent off. I mean, they take the lead, and they managed to be 3-1 down at the interval. They only took the lead a few minutes before half time, so they didn't really look like ever scoring the second half, did they?
No,
So I think there's a very real chance they could go down. Whether they would, I don't know if you remember when they did go down before. It's a bit boring when you don't play them. Apart from the fact that they give us 6 points every year, it's the fact that the rival isn't as interesting when we don't play them.
I don't know, Peter. I'd
Um,
like a year. I'd like a year off
Oh,
because even though
yeah.
they're
yeah,
rubbish,
yeah,
I still get so stressed during those games. And Kev mentioned about some of his
yeah,
mates that can't watch
yeah.
matches. I don't watch the North London derby if I'm not there. If I'm there in person, I can cope. I didn't watch the game at White Hart Lane. I turned on with 15 minutes to go. Saw the fourth goal go in. I find it way too stressful. So a year off would be amazing. And my big fear
No,
is actually that we win a domestic treble, Spurs go down and win the Champions League. Imagine that. And would you settle for that? Because
yeah. That
you
would
never
be
know.
interesting,
It's,
wouldn't it? Yeah,
it's quite
yeah,
it's quite an easy side of the draw. Spurs could squeak through to the semis. They feasibly could. And if we
Hang
don't
on,
make
hang
it,
on,
or
stop.
God forbid,
It's Atletico Madrid, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then isn't it Real Madrid in the or Man City in the next
Or
round?
Man City, yeah, yeah,
So that's not an easy
yeah.
draw.
no, it's not easy, Kev, but you never know, right? You never know. And imagine, would you settle for that? Domestic treble, Spurs going down, they win the Champions League?
No,
I
Do you know,
wouldn't.
sorry, we can't.
I, I,
Win.
I think I would. I think I would actually if we won if we won the Premier League. But obviously I'd love us to
Peter,
win.
you're
Yeah,
in the stadium. Spurs
yeah,
are singing Champions League. You'll never win that.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
sorry. I
Yeah,
mean,
that
it's
is
bad enough for
difficult.
Chelsea,
Yeah.
but at least we know how they did it by basically spending bucket loads of money.
But
There's
yeah,
no
but the
merit.
thing is, you wouldn't be in the stadium with them because they'd be playing Lincoln or somebody else, wouldn't
Wrexham.
they? Yeah,
Yeah, I think that would be okay. I would take the treble. I would take the domestic treble. I
And
wouldn't be
Spurs
happy about Spurs winning the Champions League, but as long as they went down as well,
Yeah, that's got
Yeah,
to be a
they win the
caveat, right?
Champions League
That
and
is the
escape
caveat.
relegation. That's the deal is off the table completely.
yeah,
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that is, yeah, that's what makes it a vaguely interesting
Gentlemen, you
question.
are dealing
Yeah.
with the devil. All I will say is you can pay consequences of this kind of talk. That's all I am saying. But let's return to another team in the Champions League, which is Arsenal. Now, it looks like, we have a relatively easier run to the potential last four, where I would argue the best team we could face is likely Barcelona. But until then, of course, Bayer Leverkusen, then one of Sporting Lisbon or Bodo Glimt, if we get through Leverkusen. I mean, with our defence, and also with, in theory, Champions League games generally being a little more open, we don't tend to see the low block quite as much. Are you optimistic about us making the last four? Any naysayers?
No, I would say yes. I'm optimistic about getting to the last four. I think we've been lucky with the draw, and really we should take advantage of it. And hopefully we can do enough in the first leg that you can rest players in the second leg of this round and the next round. I would hope. I mean, it probably won't pan out like that. We'll probably be scrambling around for a last minute goal to get through. But I would say, yeah, I'm very optimistic of getting to the semi-finals.
Yeah,
I remember last year we beat PSV 7-1 away, didn't we? And then you had one or two people saying, "Well, good, they're charging a fortune for the second leg," as if we've done something wrong. I think I agree with Phil. I think we should beat those sides, and I think it's the second priority for us. I think we have played very well this season. I was very surprised how well we did in Milan recently, because I thought there wouldn't be the same pressure to get a result there, because we were already sort of top of the league and likely to qualify for the last eight. But we played really well over them, and my friend Gabriel Jesus got 2 goals because it was the Champions League.
Great stuff.
Yeah, I think it's just, sorry, Kev, it's just interesting what you're saying about priorities there, Peter, because although obviously the big 2 trophies are the Premier League and the Champions League, the Carabao Cup, if we get beaten by Man City in that might throw a spanner into the works of the whole season. I think it's very important to win that game, just because
Absolutely
it's the first
agreed.
one and
Yeah.
the first trophy.
Yeah, psychologically it's huge, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll be discussing that at length in the next episode of the podcast, which falls on the Thursday before that particular final. And I can see your thinking, that much I will say. But in terms of the Champions League, next season, if we made the last 8, or if we made the last 4, we have a new pricing category been introduced by our friends at KSE, which is the A+. Now, my current season ticket at the towards the back of the East Stand next to Centre is £96.80 for a Grade A game. I'm not sure exactly what the rise will be, but I think it'll be something around about 120 for an A+. That's my guess anyway. There comes a point where you have to say enough's enough. I mean, let's say, for example, that we were in next season. Okay, we've got this quarterfinal home leg, and we're going to be playing Bodo Glimt, and they're asking us £120 or wherever you are, Phil, in the lower, probably 100, 105. Do you think there are season tickets holders who are going to say, actually, my loyalty has a limit?
I think there are lots of factors involved, including what have we done in the competition in the past. I mean, if we never got to a Champions League semi-final before or quarter-final, and they're slapping the A+ price on it, then people are going to say, "Oh, well, it's a one-off," or up to this point anyway, it's a one-off. Therefore, I'm prepared to pay it. So, I mean, some people are not going to have the money, and that's the end of it. They paid their season ticket, they don't have any more spare money, and therefore there's nothing they can do about it. But if even if you've got the money, you're going to be thinking, well, is it worth it? And it's only worth it if you think it's a one-off. You could argue, but obviously as time goes on, prices go up anyway, and people get accustomed to the new price. But if it's the third semi-final in 4 years, and I think they're going to do it for the quarter and the semi, aren't they? That's the intention. I mean, you could argue that on Arsenal's ranking, they should be getting to the quarterfinals every year, as long as they manage the top 4 of the leagues get in there in the first place. But if it happens every year, then yeah, people are going to get turned off it and say, well, I've seen Champions League quarterfinals before. I've seen Barcelona 8 times, and I've seen Bayern Munich 57 times in this competition. Why do I want to pay 150 quid to see them one more time? People are going to get turned off. However, there is still the demand from people who can't get tickets, who are going to come in and fill that space. So as long as that continues to be the case, then the club can get away with it. And that's what they're doing. They're just pushing things as far as they can to get away with it. But it's just, from Stan Kroenke's point of view, it is purely a business. A football club was an entity set up to be run and owned and for the benefit of members. And now they call us members, but we're just customers. We pay to go, we pay to be a member, we pay for everything. And all Kroenke wants to do is take as much money from us as he possibly can without frightening us all away.
I agree with a lot of that, Phil. I think the thing is, as you mentioned at the end, about there is a lot of people at the moment that want to come and watch Arsenal. We know that can change. I mean, I think in the latter days of Wenger, there was massive empty gaps in the stadium often, but that isn't the case at the moment. If you think about gigs and stuff like that, right? I mean, going back to when you would bulk at paying £50 to watch a concert. Now you regularly pay over £100 to watch any kind of stadium show, and that becomes the norm. And it's become the norm very quickly. And I worry that with football, the minute this is gets put in 2 to 3 years' time, we don't question anymore what's happened. We get used to this grade A+ or whatever it's called. And that's generally what tends to happen, which is actually the really, really sad thing. I think it will only change. People will only kind of go against it if the results don't go well. But then we wouldn't be in the quarterfinals or the semi-finals of the Champions League if that's happening. So I think the club will probably get away with it in the immediate future. And it makes me really sad because I think it's taking the piss. But
yeah,
it's what it is, really.
Yeah, I mean, the thing to also say is that how many Rest Stadium concerts are you going to attend in a calendar year? It's probably not going to be 25.
No.
But
I think we've had some very acrimonious discussions on the Goonerholic blog about this, and I'm, it's very difficult, but I think that is too much to ask people, because one of the things I like about football and going to Arsenal is the fact that you've got such a spread of different people there, and it's not. It's not been gentrified in the way that Margaret Thatcher possibly intended it should be when the Taylor report came in. It's still a game a lot of people of lower incomes attend, because they often attend and bring their children to the game. That's how the Arsenal gospel is spread, and every club spreads like that. And if you've got those prices, it just becomes unsustainable for people.
Couldn't agree more, Peter. And I know I'm a bit of a advocate for it, but the women's game, the reason why I like it so much is actually down to the prices. I mean, my daughter's season ticket for the North Bank Low at the Emirates is 100 quid. And admittedly, it's only 11 games a season, but that is less than £10 a match. And, it's really, really good prices. And of course, you could argue it's not sustainable in the long term, and does it actually make a profit and everything else? But the fact is that families attend those games in abundance
Yeah.
because they're affordable. And of course, the Premier League can't charge that. But there's something to be said for affordable tickets to get, working class and families along to actually go and watch football.
Yeah, and
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to make it all a class thing, but Everton famously have very low ticket prices, and in the Premier League for a club who was for a while challenging the big boys. You could argue they're one of the big six at one time. It was they've always had very low prices and they've stuck to it. In other countries, you look at Bayern Munich and all the German clubs, and their season tickets are a fraction of what we pay, a tiny fraction. They're talking about £300 or £400 for a season ticket compared to well over 1,000 here. Well, at Arsenal certainly, and the big clubs. So it's there are other ways of doing it. There are other ways of running a football club than just trying to extract the maximum amount of money from every fan who passes through the turnstiles. It doesn't have to be that way, and it's just it's disappointing that it is that way.
I think I read in the last 3 years we've released 84 different lines of leisure wear with the club shop, and I probably bought every single one. So what I'm trying to say is actually that's not that bad. But what I'm saying is the club can get us via other means.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we need to get organised in the way that Liverpool fans do, and actually make a public show, and basically make the Cronkies embarrassed, at what they're trying to do is probably the best.
Yeah, I'm not sure that embarrassment is enough really for Stan. He doesn't really care what people think.
Well, it's PR, isn't it? That's the thing. It's not so much he gives a damn. It's what it looks like for his product. I mean, let's put it this way: for whatever reason, the Liverpool protests seem to work.
But I don't think Stan cares that much about what people think of him or his product, as long as people keep turning up and paying him the money.
Yeah,
I really don't think he cares about anything else.
You may be right. But, do we passively accept it, or one for future discussion there? And as we have been going for well over an hour, I am going to draw this one to a close and express my thanks to Marc Ollington, Peter Beau, and Phil Wall for being on the panel. I will be back on Thursday. I'm not sure exactly the date. It might be the 19th. It's basically the Thursday before the Carabao Cup final. It's just under 2 weeks' time. But until then, many thanks to everybody for either watching or listening. And here's to a decent run of games for Arsenal until next time.